All righty. Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you all here with us tonight. We start our meeting with an invocation, which we observe by a moment of silence, and then the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight, we're so excited to welcome the Daisy Troop 1079 that's going to be leading us in the pledge. Welcome, Daisies. So, these are kindergartners and first graders from Roosevelt. Raise your hand if you're at Roosevelt. Longfellow. Quincy. Whittier. White Pine, Trailwind, and Lakeshore Montessori. Oh, is that Willow who's not here? No, somebody else. Okay. Well, okay. Thank you. This is such a special night. We haven't had Girl Scouts lead our Pledge of Allegiance in a long, long time. So it's wonderful to welcome you here. It was really nice to be able to talk with all these girls right before the council meeting. And so we'll go ahead and start. What I'll do is we're going to stand up and be quiet for just a moment. And then I'll ask you all to come up and then we'll have you start the pledge. And then we'll all start to say it once you've started it. Sound good? Great. All right. Daisy Troop, will you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. So we've got quite a long meeting. I'm just going to take a pause so that the Girl Scouts can head on out. You did a great job. And I want you to remember that when you grow up and you're the size of us up here, you can be sitting up here taking care of Boise. So thanks for being here tonight when you're in kindergarten and first grade. I'm going to remember this forever and look forward to the day that you're leaders in our city too. Bye-bye. All right, now it's really going to be hard to top that, everybody. Sorry. But really wonderful that you got to experience that as well. I don't think we've had Girl Scouts in here since, I made those stickers right before COVID. So we had Girl Scout patches made that Holly Woodings made when she was a troop mom and on the city council. And I think that we welcomed them in probably January, February of 2020. And it's really been since then that we've had Scouts at all. So it was awesome to have them back. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Morales.
Here.
Nash. Stead.
Here.
Willett. 4 present, 2 absent.
And now we've got minutes for approval.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes for the work session and regular meeting on December 2nd.
Second.
Clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And now we have the consent agenda.
And Madam Mayor, I'm going
Yes.
to move that we take item number 4 under resolutions 629-25 off the consent agenda and vote for it individually. That's our youth roadmap.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, clerk?
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And then with that, Madam Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, clerk?
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I just want to quickly note about this included an agreement with ACHD for a traffic signal at the future Alta Harris Park in the East End down in Harris Ranch. So just wanted to note that. I know the residents have been long awaiting that and one step closer.
Great news. All right.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor, I pulled item number 4 under our resolutions off the consent agenda just so that we would have the opportunity to vote on this individually. This is a initiative that the City Council helped fund for a youth roadmap that really helps us create a long-term plan and a lens in which we develop and build and grow our city, making sure that we're always doing it with our youth in mind so that they can grow, thrive, and ultimately contribute to the future of Boise. I won't go through all the fanfare. We did that earlier today in our work session, but I felt like it was very appropriate that we had our Girl Scouts here to kick off today as well. And so just wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to get our council's names specifically, aligned with this resolution that everybody's worked so hard on. So with that, I'll move that we approve resolution 629 25, our Boise Youth Roadmap.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Wonderful. And now we will move into ordinances. Looks like we've got one on first reading.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the first reading calendar be read by number and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD 44-25, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 3, Chapter 16, non-consent towing services, amending the title of Section 4, subsection 6, amending Section 2 to add additional definitions, amending Section 3, subsection 2, and Section 4, subsection 9 to increase fees, amending Section 4, subsections 5, 6, and 7 to align with changes to the Idaho Code, amending Section 7 to update towing and storage rates, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date.
And now second reading.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the second reading calendar be read by number and title only and filed for the third reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD 38-25, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 5, Section 50, Boise City Electrical Code to remove electric vehicle charger circuit requirements for residential garages and providing effective date. ORD 39-25, an ordinance CAR 25-00012 for property located at 2705 and 2709 North Cole Road, Boise, Idaho 83704, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change classification of real property, particularly described in Section 1 of this ordinance and adjacent rights of way, from R-1C, residential traditional, to R-2, residential compact, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date. ORD 40-25, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 3, Chapter 17, Section 3, entitled Special Events with Liquor in a City Park or Recreation Facility, to move reference to a pilot program, amending Boise City Code Title 7, Chapter 7, Article A, Section 13, to adopt permanently the pilot program into City Code, approving a summary of the ordinance and providing an effective date.
Thank you. And now we have two on first, second, and third reading. And I do want to point out that the first one is an ordinance that enacts our property tax rebate program. We talked about this at our work session. I believe that will be the third year since we started this program where we are actually the only city in Idaho that provides a property tax rebate to folks on fixed income, others that qualify for, the circuit breaker. We created a Boise program to extend affordability efforts as far as we could to support those that need this rebate to help them afford to stay in their homes. And with that, we'll take both of these, at least at the beginning, together.
Madam Mayor, I move that all rules of the council interfering with the immediate consideration of ORD 42-25 and ORD 43-25 be suspended, and that the portions of Idaho Code 50-902 requiring an ordinance to be read on 3 different days, twice by title and once in full, be dispensed with, that the records show it has been read the third time in full.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries. ORD 42-25, an ordinance enacting a property tax rebate program as authorized by Idaho Code Section 50-235, reaffirming that $900,000 has been appropriated to fund the City of Boise tax rebate program, providing instructions and deadlines for property taxpayers to apply for a property tax rebate, setting forth the formula to be used to calculate property tax rebates, providing a method for distribution of property tax rebates, providing for a waiver of the reading rules, and providing an effective date. ORD 43-25, an ordinance CAR 24-00019 for property located at parcel S 1618317900, annexing 3.1 acres of certain lands and territory situated in Ada County, Idaho, adjacent and contiguous to the corporate limits of the city of Boise City, establishing and determining the land use classification of said 3.1 acres as I-1 light industrial, establishing and determining the sensitive lands overlay district of said acres, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such annexation and zone change, directing the city engineer to lodge and file a legal description and map for said annexed lands and territory, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Auditor, the Ada County Treasurer, the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission, providing that a copy of said legal description and map of said annexed lands and territory be recorded with the Ada County Recorder and filed with the Ada County Assessor and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, repealing ordinance 14-25 and providing effective date.
Madam Mayor, I move that ORD 42-25 be approved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second discussion.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I just reiterating what you brought up earlier. This really is an incredible opportunity for some of our most vulnerable community members who already qualify for that circuit breaker program at the state to receive an average of about $500 or so in property tax rebates from the city. I do want to give just sort of a call out to our staff. About 93% of the people who are eligible for this property tax rebate receive it. A lot of the reason being that our staff makes it so easy for them to get their paperwork in, even going door to door to make sure that every single person qualifies for the circuit breaker, has a stamped envelope in their hands ready to send back to the city. This isn't one of those things where there's a lot of debate from council because we know it's such a great thing to do. But it's really something that our staff has made really something easy for our community members to do. So hopefully the folks who are out there who are eligible are applying for that circuit breaker program at the state and then taking advantage of this extra rebate that they can get from the city as well.
All right, clerk.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move that ORD 43-25 be approved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second discussion. Clerk.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Alrighty, now we've got two subdivisions on the agenda. What we'll do is we've got staff coming up. Sorry, now I need to look at my script agenda. Jesse, are you covering both? You are. Jesse's covering both of them. We don't expect the public to be here for this first one. Is anybody here to testify on this beyond the applicant? So what I'll do, and the applicant, will you raise your hand? Wonderful. Okay. I'll have you two work that out. Okay. I'll see if the applicant is in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report, and if so, then I'll probably just send this direct to council.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
in regards to subdivision 24-00012, I'll be recusing myself from this tonight. I've previously made comments on this in its prior forms and projects coming up, but I will be sitting here but not participating in discussion or voting.
Okay. We're doing, I understand why I had two different people raise their hands. The first one on the agenda is the Cuba subdivision, and the second one came up. So first we're dealing with 2519. The applicant is perfect. All right. So I'll check in with you after I hear from Jesse. Thanks.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The item before you is SUB 2519. It's a preliminary plat for residential subdivision comprised of 5 buildable and 1 common lot on 0.79 acres located at 7622 Settlers Avenue in an R1C zone. On November 10th, the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval on the consent agenda for the preliminary plat. As outlined in the project report, all lots within the subdivision meet the dimensional standards of the R1C zone. As conditioned, the applicant will provide a 5-foot wide detached sidewalk along Settlers Avenue as required by the development code. The proposal includes to maintain the existing home and create 4 additional lots, all accessed via private street, and a variance was granted to only install sidewalk on the east side of the new private street adjacent to the homes. As detailed in the project report, the Planning and Zoning Commission find the application was consistent with the approval criteria and recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions? All right, I'll ask if the applicant is in agreement with terms and conditions. All right, let the record reflect that the applicant is. Nobody's here for this. I'm going to go ahead and close this one.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of SUB 25-19, a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 5 buildable and 1 common lot located at 7622 West Settlers Avenue in an R1C residential zone.
Second.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
this looks like an appropriate project that fits within code. I think the decision to do the attached 5-foot sidewalk on the private drive is appropriate, makes sense in this location. So I appreciate staff's work on this.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I might just add, it's always kind of fun to get these applications in where the existing house is preserved, because if there's already house structure there, no need to, tear it down and rebuild. So a great opportunity to get some additional infill while preserving the house that exists that's already been there. So just want to thank the developer for coming forward with a way to preserve some existing housing while also generating some more at the same time. So good application.
All right, with that, clerk?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
And now, SUB 12, noted that Councilmember Corliss will be recusing herself. We've got Hawkins that is the applicant. Is anybody here to testify on this? Anybody online? All right. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor and council members, this item is SUB 2412, a preliminary plat and final plat comprised of 1 buildable lot and the dedication of right-of-way on 6.12 acres located at 1770 Maple Grove Road in an R2 AIO zone. The site may look familiar as it was before this body in September 2024 for a comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use from suburban to compact, a rezone from A1 to R2, and an appeal of the denial of a CUP to exceed the 5-unit per acre maximum density in the B1 airport influence area. Since then, a design review approval for 162 units was approved, as well as a property line adjustment as shown on the screen. The current subdivision will dedicate the Mohican roadway extension to ACHD, and a condition of approval will require some of the remaining right-of-way to be vacated. As outlined in the project report, the proposed subdivision will meet all the requirements of the development code, including those for tree mitigation and detached sidewalks. The existing attached sidewalk along the north side of Vincent Street, however, will be retained as it's not adjacent to the property. The applicant is fulfilling the condition of the CUP to provide a 10-foot wide east-west pedestrian pathway through the site as shown in green on your screen. A condition of approval will require a public pathway easement to be recorded prior to the issuance of building permits. Public comment was submitted in opposition to the project, with concerns mainly stemming from increased traffic within the surrounding neighborhood to the connection of Vincent Street and Mediterranean Court, as well as the dilapidated nature of Vincent Street. However, the most direct access route to the property is from Maple Grove Road, and ACHD has not indicated that there are any concerns with the proposed roadway extension or additional traffic impacts. At the hearing, one person expressed concerns about the grading of the apartments and privacy. However, the commission found that this would be better addressed at the time of grading permits and with enhanced landscaping. In conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All right. I'll ask, are you in agreement with terms and conditions of the staff report? Okay. Anybody here for this? I'll go ahead and close this one. Thanks.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of SUB 24-12, a preliminary plat and final plat for 1 buildable lot and the dedication of the right-of-way on 6.12 acres located at 1770 South Maple Grove Avenue in an R2 AIO zone.
Second.
You have a motion and a second discussion?
Madam Mayor, this seems like an appropriate infill project to me. I know that there were some current concerns on the roadways and traffic. We have partnerships with ACHD. Our staff is not necessarily traffic and road experts because we rely on them to be the experts in that space. So when they tell us that a project won't have, that the roads that exist there can support the building, that's what we go with. They're the experts in that space. So I appreciate their input on that and appreciate the pathway and connectivity that this project will bring. So thanks to the applicant, thanks to staff.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, the first time this came in front of us, it was a zoning code change and a conditional use permit. And I voted no on it because of a lot that had to do with the airport influence area. Now that it is rezoned, I do think this is an appropriate development for the area, but I do want to note some of those traffic concerns. Again, we're not ACHD, so we're not necessarily doing the ones that are the traffic studies in these areas, but it sounds like on Vincent and Vanell, there's been a large amount of small crashes. I don't think that a lot of them have related in serious injuries, but fender benders, mostly because kind of a funky road alignment on Vincent and Vanell. There are going to be additional cars coming through this area, and so there is a chance that those collisions may increase. And so I do think that there's an opportunity for ACHD in the city of Boise to be talking about ACHD on what a potential traffic treatment would look like on Vanell and Vincent to address some of those concerns.
Madam Mayor, I just want to thank the applicant for this final plat. We, had quite a bit of commentary on this when it came before us for the rezone, but I want to thank them for bringing more homes to this activity center. This is an area that has a lot of amenities and commercial things nearby, and it's an area that I think will continue to grow with all that activity there. So thank you for providing more homes for our neighbors.
All right, clerk.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move into the public hearing of the evening, CAR 25-17. This is at 1907 West Jefferson Street. So we've got Jesse again. So this is your night. And then Ben Semple, I think I saw in the audience, the applicant. Is West End Neighborhood Association is here. Yep. And I saw that you signed up too. So then I'll kick it over to you. And then after that, I'll open it up to the public. Some of you have signed up already, and I'll go through this list. But if you didn't sign up and you're wanting to talk, don't worry about it. We'll just call you up one at a time, and you can then sign your name there. Is anybody online for this? Okay, so everybody's here. That makes it so much simpler. With that, go ahead, Jesse.
Okay, for the final thing tonight, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. This item is CAR 2517 and SUB 2550. This is a rezone of approximately 1.96 acres, which includes adjacent rights of way located at 1907 West Jefferson Street from R2 and R3 to MX1. A preliminary plat for a mixed-use subdivision comprised of 21 residential, 1 commercial, and 2 common lots on 1.06 acres is also included. And here are the rezone findings, just as a reminder. The subject properties are currently zoned R3 on the southern half of the project area, as seen in the image on the left in dark orange, and R2 on the north in medium orange. The land use designation as seen on the right are high density on the south in medium orange and compact on the north in light orange, both of which allow for the MX1 zone. The proposed rezone is appropriate as the property is between 2 arterial roadways, State Street and Main Street, near bus routes and bikeways, and near employment areas and commercial areas, as well as being located within 3 activity centers. Additionally, this is a parcel that has been vacant for years, and the comprehensive plan encourages infill development to support existing infrastructure and reduce vehicle miles traveled. The proposed townhomes would be 2 to 3 stories, and as conditioned would be limited to be 35 feet at the top of the parapet, with rooftop pergolas and overruns allowed at 45 feet. As shown in the table, the existing zoning would allow for up to 4-story structures with a height limit of 45 feet for the R2 zone and 50 feet for the R3 zone, whereas the MX1 has a maximum height of 45 feet. Neither the existing or proposed zoning has density limits. The MX1 zone requires either a mix of uses or a minimum of 2-story structures, both of which would be met by the proposal. Any proposed buildings would also be subject to further administrative design review. As proposed, the subdivision would have the 21 residential, 1 commercial, and 2 common lots. All lots would meet the dimensional standards of the MX1 zone. All vehicle access would be consolidated to the east-west alley and common lots, and a variance was granted to allow reduced rear setbacks internal to the site adjacent to those common lots. Parking for the townhomes would be provided in 1 to 2 car garages, whereas the minimum parking requirement for a single-family home is 1 space. Additionally, 4 surface parking spaces would be provided internal to the site for the commercial space and guest parking. There's also unrestricted street parking adjacent to the property on all 4 sides. The applicant is planning to retain the existing detached sidewalk shown in yellow on the screen and add additional internal pathways as shown in orange. There are existing street trees which will mostly be maintained, and additional trees will be planted internal to the site and within the landscape buffer, meeting all mitigation requirements. The applicant has also proposed a landscaped amenity with historical marker of public art along 19th Street, and a condition of approval will require a public access easement over this area. Public comment was received and was included both in the original projects report as well as late correspondence for Planning and Zoning Commission. General concerns include the timing of the rezone in relation to the adoption of the zoning code and citywide rezone in 2023. Concerns with height and density, traffic, parking, and the design, as well as the variance request. At the hearing, many of these similar concerns were expressed. While there was a citywide rezone associated with the adoption of the current zoning code in December of 2023, that rezone was based on a citywide conversion logic that did not consider parcels on an individual basis. It was anticipated that the conversion logic would work as designated for the majority of parcels throughout the city. However, rezoning of individual parcels based on specific circumstances was anticipated. It should be noted that the base zoning of the subject properties did not change with the 2023 rezone update, and that the only modification was to remove the design review overlay, and this was citywide. As stated in the project report, the subject property is an undeveloped lot located within 3 activity centers and near service areas and alternative transportation options. The proposed rezone is supported by the future land use map and would allow similar development as to what is allowed by the current R2 and R3 zoning. However, there would be smaller setbacks and lot sizes, as well as additional commercial opportunities with the MX1 zone. As proposed, all parking requirements will be met, and the proposal is subject to further design review. Finally, the Planning and Zoning Commission found the variance request met the required findings and reconsideration was not requested. In conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of the project, and I am happy to stand for questions.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I just wanted to confirm one thing, Jesse. I think I was trying to figure out when I was looking at the plans, and I think you said this, but the variance for the setbacks is all interior, would not impact the adjacent neighbors. Is that correct?
That's correct. So they would be interior to the development along these common lots that are giving access to the proposed units for vehicles.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to confirm, you mentioned this property being between State Street and Main Street. Both of those we have best-in-class bus transit lines on, correct? Got 2 best-in-class bus transit lines.
Madam Mayor, council members, State Street is a best-in-class transit route and Fairview is, and so the Main Street Fairview kind of separate but feed into that area.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ben, come on up.
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, thanks for having us this evening. Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners, 1450 West Bannock Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I want to thank Jesse and the rest of the staff for putting together a very detailed staff report and just helping us navigate the process. I have a brief presentation of some slides to just show you a little bit more detail on the structures themselves, and then just kind of talk through some of the additional details of the project. As Jesse stated, this is a rezone from R2, R3, R2 on the north of the alley, R3 to the south to an MX1 zone that does fit within the future land use designation of compact and high density. And then a subdivision, these will all be single family homes, other than the corner lot at the, I know I can't point to the one in front of me, but right here At the northeast corner is the commercial space. That would be between 900 and 1,000 square feet. So sort of a small neighborhood scaled commercial. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I do want to just reiterate, we are in agreement with the staff report, all the conditions of approval that came out of planning and zoning, including the restriction on the height here. There's 21 single family units, the one neighborhood scaled commercial. We have been trying to talk to a couple of the local bodega market operators. We've not been able to connect with either of them yet about interest in this space. But with our proposal, we have about at least 4 times the amount of parking necessary for this kind of a low intensity commercial retail use. This could be an artist studio, it could be somebody's small office. We use market, and we've talked about a bodega a lot here, because that's kind of what we were envisioning for a little bit of an injection of some activity within the neighborhood. There was some disagreement in the neighborhood about whether it was necessary or appropriate here. So I just want to bring up that we don't have an operator for this space yet. The owner, who is also the developer, is also intending to live in a unit on this site. He will own and maintain the ownership of that corner space until it's either sold to a business operator or he'll lease it to somebody else. He could also use it as his personal office space as well. These townhomes are 2-story and 3-story units. There's some renderings here off to the side of the units. I have some other ones a little bit further here. Just to reorient ourselves. So these are there's technically 3 parcels here, bounded by Jefferson on the north, 21st on the west, 19th on the east, and Bannock to the south. It's kind of that strange location where the grid of our city shifts or kind of rotates a little bit. Just to show again the future land use and the project site in relation. Fairview Park is about 800 feet from this site as well. Currently, I think it's about done with the renovation on that park. And then this is just a little bit wider view of the zoning of the area around here. I brought this up again. I showed this at P&Z. I just want to demonstrate the number of pedestrian connectivities, the bikeways that exist here currently. Jefferson and Bannock. I think Bannock Street is technically the designated bikeway. Jefferson also has sharrows along it as well. This shows the bus routes on Main and State Street. There's stops virtually right at the end where you would intercept those 2 transit routes. This is also very close into the downtown core, so walkable into the downtown. This is a preliminary landscape plan. We will be enhancing that street buffer, really trying to get away from as much irrigated turf grass, go with some more perennials, ground covers, enhancing the tree canopy along the exterior as well as the interior. These are some of the renderings. So I want to talk more about height. So there's this discussion about 2, 3, and 4-story. I know that some of the neighbors have some concerns about these being 4 stories. There's 3 enclosed stories worth of living on some of these units. Some of them are also 2-story. This rendering shows a view from Jefferson and 19th. This would be the 2-story unit, ground level parking, living, kitchen, and then bedrooms on the 2nd floor. All of these will have a rooftop amenity space for the residents, including potential pergolas, some barbecue spaces. Again, these will be further reviewed through design review with the city at a staff level. I do want to highlight that these will all also have residential elevators in them. So it's kind of a little bit higher end product, but it makes these units more livable and visitable. If you can get to every floor of your unit without using stairs. So this allows some age in place with this project as well. We are limiting our height. So the parapet wall here, 35-foot maximum to the parapet with a 45-foot max height to the top of any structure, whether that's the elevator overrun or a pergola. Currently, the zones all around here are either R2 or R3. And as Jesse stated, R2 would allow up to 4 stories and 45 feet in height. And the R3 zone would allow up to 4 stories and a 50-foot maximum height. So we're below both of the surrounding zones' maximum height allowances. And, you know, have memorialized this in a condition of approval that we agree with, as a way to respond to some of the neighbor concerns while still getting a project that works for my client to build here. This is another view from Bannock Street. Again, just demonstrating that, you know, we're trying to step down at the corners here just to try to bring a little bit of scale back down. And then the 3-story be more interior to those block lengths. It is a more kind of modern architectural style. There's a mix of architectural styles and project styles throughout the West End neighborhood. Single, 2-family, multifamily projects, 2 and 3-story structures. The 3 stories are a little bit closer into downtown. Again, this is very close to that transition, kind of that near downtown neighborhood and West End transition. There will also be an HOA that gets established with this subdivision. There'll be CC&Rs, so a lot of control over what these look like. There was some concern about, you know, if it gets rezoned to MX1, what's to stop someone to come in and do some more intensive commercial development? With this proposal, we're willing to enter into a development agreement, or I think that the conditions of approval and the approval in general, based on what we're proposing, would protect anything from happening without additional substantial public process to get back through to change this. Again, my client builds homes for people. He wants to build homes here and live here as well. Parking on this, every unit will have at least a oversized 1-car garage, about 18-foot wide is the narrowest we get on a unit. That allows for 2 small cars, a car and a motorcycle, you know, or someone that is a single car family or has a lot of bikes that they ride, makes for a nice storage space for those. We are not relying on street parking for any of our required parking here. So we've exceeded our requirement, as well as added additional on-site for guests to be off-street. There's 4 block frontages that have public parking. There is a residential parking zone that starts at 19th Street and goes east towards downtown. I'm intending to reach out to ACHD to talk to them about what the process of extending that residential parking zone would be. I know that there's a lot of people that park as close to downtown as they can in some of these neighborhoods and walk in. I think that that is exacerbating some of the on-street parking issues that some of these streets do have, Jefferson primarily, because it is a little bit narrower of a street section as compared to Bannock. But we're trying to do, I want to flip back to the site plan real quick too. At this northeast corner here, we're proposing to do an on-street ProAg ADA stall so that it kind of restricts parking right at that corner and leaves that open more, as well as allows for direct access from an ADA stall to that retail commercial space on the corner, so that they don't have to park in the other ADA stall on site and walk on the sidewalk to get to that space. We're also talking with and have proposed to ACHD that we install stop signs, at the corner here at 19th and Jefferson and on the other side of 19th and Jefferson. There's currently stop signs north-south on 19th, but not on Jefferson. And that intersection, there's a strange turn to it. There's a little bit of visibility issues. I think it makes a lot of sense to put another stop sign to make a 4-way stop. It also has another effect of maybe pushing people down to Bannock a little more, which does have a wider street section on it, and tends to be, just a little less congested than the Jefferson Street. And that's from basically downtown all the way over to the west end of Jefferson. There's a lot of on-street parking. There are a lot of homes that have been developed where they've split lots and people don't have garages or even off-street parking, so they're reliant fully on on-street. Let's see. Road frontage, we're going to keep the same, other than what we need to replace per ACHD. All the curb gutter sidewalks in pretty good condition. If we need to replace it, that'll get torn out and replaced. One of the other things that came up with this is there's a gap in water along 21st Street here. There's a valve bank in the corner and there's a hydrant down here. Veolia has asked us to connect that with an 8-inch water main, and that is being proposed. We'd also install a new fire hydrant mid-block at the alley to provide some additional fire protection for this area. We'll be widening the alley to 20 feet. It's currently 16 feet wide. And my client is working with Intermountain Gas. There's kind of a blow-off pressure relief structure right on the alley. Intermountain Gas has indicated it's probably not necessary. And so they're working on how to manipulate their infrastructure to remove that. And then try to bury as many power lines as we can along the alley to really remove that from the visual of the neighborhood. That alley would be fully paved to 20 feet as well. Jesse talked about some of our amenities that we have. We do have an indoor bike parking structure in the middle here that's in the common lot. That would be utilized for the residents to secure bikes so that they don't have to, again, put it in a garage and maybe push their car out to a street or something. Trying to accommodate, make this livable. One of the other things that we've already talked with solid waste with the city about is consolidating trash service on this to a single enclosure for trash and recycling that would be serviced more than likely twice a week so that you don't have, 40 cans out here on a collection day or pushed out into the street. We'll also have a grease trap for potential if there's any light food offering at that retail space. And then we do have the ability to put a residential/commercial compost facility there that we're working on that enclosure design to keep things separated and comply with what solid waste has indicated they would support. Jesse also talked about that we're within 3 activity centers. I'd mentioned that we're about 800 feet from Fairview Park. And we are really, I did a little bit of research on the history of this area. There actually used to be a market on this site in the past. That has since gone away. There was a Salvation Army building on the southern portion here. There also used to be a trolley line that ran down Bannock from downtown out to Whittier Elementary location. So part of that history, the people we're talking to have the ability to get some old rail lines that have been dug up out of Boise City streets when ACHD does street projects. So we're looking to try to incorporate that rail history that was adjacent into that public space and some artwork and, maybe some interpretive signage that just kind of talks about the site. Really excited about the project. It will be phased in construction or sequenced, I guess, if you will, with the start of construction on the south half, moving towards the north half. That being said, all of the amenities and infrastructure would be installed with the first phase or the first portion of construction. All the road work, utilities, all that stuff would occur with the first homes that get built so that in the future, it's really just vertical construction that happens as those are sequenced and build. So that's about all I have. Excuse me. I'd happy to stand for additional questions that you might have.
Thanks.
Ben Mayor. Ben, you covered quite a few of my questions already. I read through the transcripts from the planning and zoning hearing and had some follow-up questions about the trash and some other things, but I appreciate you bringing those up. I think it was maybe 2023, ACHD approved the Bannock kind of bikeway concept plan. I think it extended all the way from almost to Whitewater Park, all the way over to the other side of Broadway, really Bannock kind of being that major east-west route. Some of the intersections I remember had concepts planned for raised or elevated intersections and stuff like that. I'm just curious if you had to factor in any of that planning for some of the street designs on the corner there at, I guess it's probably Bannock and 19th Street.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, ACHD did not indicate any change to what our proposal was in their staff report. We are going to work on that 19th and Bannock corner. There's a large expanse of concrete from the previous Salvation Army building that was there. But they didn't indicate that we would need to change our street section there. If anything on Bannock, I think it might get they might narrow it just because it's such a big curb to curb area. But I don't.
Yeah.
All I know is that Bannock and 19th in particular would not benefit from any other stop signs just because of it's kind of a weird orientation.
Yeah, when I'm remembering the concept plan, I don't think any of the elevated kind of crossways made it quite this far over. I think that was for some of the busier streets. But yeah, I was just trying to remember if there was anything kind of planned for this particular corner. Do like that you're looking into potential four-way stop there on Jefferson. I used to live in the apartment complex, just kind of on, I guess it would be the northwest corner, second story of that area. And it is kind of a funky intersection, as people are coming through, and that might be something that can, address some of those concerns, especially if you do have a bodega or a coffee shop where there is some increased pedestrian activity, which I imagine there would be if that's what moved in there from the surrounding neighborhood. So I think those are sizes.
Yeah, I anticipated that question, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton. These are going to be in the 1,700 to 2,200 square foot range on most of them. I know that my client, the one that he's designing for himself, may be a little bit bigger, but yeah, that's the size range that he's anticipating these.
And really sort of ranging because of the 2 stories to the 3 stories, 3 stories potentially having a little bit more.
That's correct. Yeah.
And then each of them have their own garage with them as well. Am I remembering that correctly?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that's correct. Each one has a garage and each one will have a rooftop kind of amenity space.
Yep. And so the thought there with that extra bicycle corral would be if people can't fit their bikes in the garage, or if they wanted more of a temporary spot to park, there's kind of some additional options for guests or for some other people. That's the intention of the corral.
Yes.
Great. And then I guess just the last question, I think you brought this up already. I think the intention of most of these units may be by sides of the commercial space, which it sounds like the developer is also the owner. These are plan on being for sale, for lease, for rent. Like, what's the plan?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, these are all fee simple lots, townhomes for sale.
Great. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Hey, Ben, thanks. Appreciate all the answers here. Got a couple more questions for you. You mentioned elevator overruns. Are those elevators personal in unit elevators, or they service multiple units?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Morales, yeah, they're individual unit residential lifts. So they're smaller. You don't get more than maybe 2 people in them, but yeah, they'll run from ground floor all the way up to the roof in each unit.
In every unit?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then I wanted to ask about the commercial compost. I don't know that I've heard of a multifamily property that is doing that. There could be some. Are you aware of anyone? Are you kind of the first working with Republic Services on this?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Morales, I mean, it is technically a single family residential project. So they classify it as residential service, but they are exploring some commercial compost options. And because we would anticipate residents wanting to have a compost option and trying to be a little bit more sustainable, we discussed that and they said, yeah, we can definitely propose that for this site with a small thing that gets serviced multiple times a week.
Yeah, I guess I should have said commercial service, not multifamily, but
yeah.
Very unique. Applaud you for considering that and working towards that. This is a very popular program. We have 4 food scrap drop-off sites now, and those are used widely by commercial multifamily users. So thanks for looking into that.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just to follow up there, I appreciate Council Member Morales' questions. 21 elevators, lifts. Is there a reason for that? Was that a requirement through the zoning code, or was that just something that you all decided to do?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, my client wants to put those in the units. Again, thinking of long-term livability of these with even 2 floors, as people age, stairs become more challenging. And so addressing that up front, it just kind of increases the buyer pool, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We had a conversation recently with our planning staff talking about different incentives. And one of the things that was brought up was visitability, and really making sure that you're building houses that are not only, potentially for people with disabilities, but also if somebody has a disability can go and actually visit and go to the place, and kind of designing around that. I don't think we've seen a lot of larger developments that have had some of that component in there. So yeah, I'm glad that Councilmember Morales brought that up, because that's very interesting.
Yeah. And Madam Mayor, council members, just as an aside, my client currently has a lift in his house, which benefited him when he had to have surgery on his back and had a hard time moving around. So when he got home, he could go to all the floors of his house. So just kind of a secondary benefit of these is, even if your friends don't need it, or parents, or you might need it at some point if you hurt yourself. So thank you.
All right. We'll hear from the West End Neighborhood Association. Welcome. Good to see you.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for
giving us a chance to bring some of the concerns of the neighborhood association. So this is an interesting project. I personally went to the meeting in the summer, the original meeting, and noted that residents in the neighborhood actually come from the West Downtown Neighborhood Association as well as MENA. So the project completely sits in the West End Neighborhood Association, though the area of impact straddles two different neighborhood associations. So I did want to make that note here. And I have been in contact with Kelly Tagg, the president of that neighborhood association as well. So we are collaborating on some of this testimony today. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that much of the feedback coming from that meeting and through a lot of meetings we've had at WENA and different emails and other sort of communications is the neighborhood is expecting this project or expecting this lot to be developed. And so there's no real hope that it wouldn't be necessarily. I mean, of course, we all love an open space, but ultimately know that this will be developed. And frankly, this development is causing, I think, more of the heartburn versus just a development itself. So there's, first of all, there was some concern about zoning from the R2, R3 split in the north and south of the project to MX1. There was some desire to keep the current zoning and try to make a project work with those two zoning classes versus doing the zoning change, which is what's on the agenda for today. And you know, the word spot zoning has come up. I know that planning and zoning did address that on the meeting in October. So simply stating that for the record. Some of the other concerns tend to be around the height of the buildings. So the 35 feet, acknowledging that is lower than what was allowed in R2 and R3. There's still a concern there at 35 feet, considering that most of the buildings or the homes that are adjacent to the property are 1 and 2 stories. So there's still some concerns that's, while allowed, it's still significantly taller than what's already being built and what's being inhabited in the neighborhood. And then general architectural incompatibility. I do want to acknowledge that the developer has made some adjustments to the project from the very beginning and to where they are now, but the neighborhood, a lot of the feedback is still considering that the neighborhood is early 20th century, and while the West End as a whole does have a lot of mixed architectural styles, the adjacent neighborhood tends to be aligned with an early 20th century housing type. So those elevations as well as those building materials. So while I do want to acknowledge that the developer has gone above and beyond with trying to make the project, I know some brick, some other things, but there's still some concerns there. And then also with the MX1 comes the commercial space, a small commercial space. So there's a belief that there's a sufficient commercial space already on State Street within walking distance. So there's some concern about the added infrastructure needed to accommodate an already busy street, which has been mentioned quite a bit in testimony already. And then thinking about the traffic volume and parking is obviously a concern that's come up numerous times, specifically on Jefferson Street between 19th and the project area through probably 21st or 22nd. So that's a very narrow street, already oversubscribed for parking. So there's some concerns there of residents. And then lastly, there's some, as far as the project goes, I think there is a desire to maybe see something that a family would be able to afford. There are some concerns that while this project is quite well amenitized, it wouldn't necessarily be what a family on median income or even slightly above would necessarily see themselves in. Some of the public spaces don't necessarily accommodate pets or children to play. It's some of the comments that have come in. And then I will say from another perspective, the West Downtown Neighborhood Association did seek input using their Facebook page and got no responses back. So unfortunately, the people that would be in support of the project are not captured, though we would assume and could infer that there are a number of supporters, especially in the area of impact, that may or may not be here this evening to be in support or not in support. So I want to also let the record show that as well. And then lastly, once again, just acknowledging that this site, the neighborhood is aware that the site will be developed and hoping for something to be more in alignment with the size and scale of the surrounding developments. So thank you.
Justin, right? Okay, I'll see if there's any questions for you.
Thank you. Yeah, Madam Mayor, just a couple of questions here. So we've had a couple of different developments or applications come up since the zoning code, and sometimes there's like a view or maybe just some disagreement of like, why didn't everything get changed at once and why is it going to get changed now? And so some different philosophies of all that should have happened at once versus, their philosophy is like, we didn't go through and change every single lot, but some were automatically changed depending on what they were. And we expected some sort of rezoning to occur. So I realize that there's some maybe disagreement on that, but that aside, what I'm trying to sort of wrestle with is that there's some challenges on the height, on this particular development. But yet it's not as high as what could be allowed in the current zone. And so I'm trying to wrestle with how this new zone, the MX1, is worse or more detrimental to the neighborhood than what exists right now, because potentially what exists right now could be higher than what is being proposed in the MX1 and could potentially be as dense, if not more dense, if they were both going to be, moved towards R2 or something along those lines. So can you help me understand why the concern versus the R3 and R2 versus the MX when the actual height difference is probably lower than what could be allowed now?
Certainly. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton. A few things come to mind with that question. Number one, yes, I'll acknowledge that what the developer is presenting is less dense than what could ultimately be built. And in some of the early conversations, especially in the summer meeting, there was a desire really to have a project that more families could get into. This project isn't necessarily geared towards families. With the elevators, we can infer a potential multiple generation household, but not necessarily explicitly for families. And that's, I think, really where a lot of that in my inference is coming from. I would imagine that there was maybe some talk about having a building more like the Martha that's a few blocks away. The building, the Travis, that's on, I think, 17th, was sort of what wasn't desired versus having something like the Martha that fits into the neighborhood. At least that was some of the feedback, that they feel it fits into the neighborhood. It was an inconvenience during construction, of course, but ultimately fits well into the neighborhood and accommodates a wider variety of, I guess, homeowners, or in this case, homeowners are, residents, because the Martha is a rental product. But
great. And then just one other question. It's funny because we see different applications come in front of us, and in some situations we would have this like an R3 coming in front, and people would be like, we wish that you could just put some commercial on there, so there was some sort of neighborhood serving aspect, and like they're fighting for an ice cream shop or a small restaurant or a coffee shop or a bodega. And then in this particular circumstance, we don't want there to be commercial, and we wish that it was another, house or another unit. Can you talk about, as far as like the neighborhood goes, is it the commercial aspect, or is it a specific type of commercial that they're worried about? Can you explain to me a little bit more about the concern with the commercial on the side? Because we do oftentimes see other neighborhoods who are actually kind of pushing and fighting for these types of things. So just trying to understand that a little bit better.
sure, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton. The difficulty in putting together testimony for this project is the wide ranges of belief what should happen on the site. I would say I previously mentioned that there's a belief that there's sufficient commercial space or commercial services already within walking distance. I think that's one. So in this neighborhood, I think there's a belief with some residents that there's not additional that's needed, right? Because if you want to go to coffee, there's already a Starbucks 3 blocks away. Or if you need to go to the grocery store, there's Albertsons right nearby, and there's a Cleaners and any number of services. There was also concerns that with the difficult intersection, that there would be some traffic concerns. I did hear the 4-way stop proposal that's being suggested, so I think that could mitigate some of those concerns. But there was some concerns, largely, as you can imagine, around traffic and parking. I think that tends to be the lever that's pulled for this specific project and having the commercial itself.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you know, just I only vote if there's a tie, but I'm just curious, since you mentioned the Travis, how the height of this proposal compares to the Travis. Is it the same?
Madam Mayor, I don't know for sure.
I was just trying to get a sense of the scale.
Sure.
Great, thanks.
I believe that would be shorter. but I
You believe the
what's being
I'll ask
proposed,
the
I believe
applicant
is
then.
shorter.
Okay,
Sure.
great, thanks. All right, anything else? All right, we'll start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I will go ahead and start with this list. Is anybody online for this? Still no. Alrighty. So Justin just testified. And David Anderson, were you planning on testifying as an?
No, I just signed it.
Great. All right. That's all right. All right. Margie is it Twitchell? Hi, welcome.
Okay, Margie Twitchell.
Oh, will you please drop the mic so that,
Yeah, guess so. Yeah.
great, thank you.
How's that?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, Margie Twitchell, 2107 West Jefferson Street. We are in opposition to the proposed development at this location to rezone from R2 to R3 to MX1. As the rezoning is now, the location and the density is what the city wants without the rezone. The design layout could be changed to fit the site. Also rezoning to MX1, there would be no setback requirements in the front and side units without some kind of development agreement. The triangular shape of the lots is not a hardship. There's other triangle shaped lots in the area. The proposed bodega coffee shop would add more vehicle traffic to a narrow section of West Jefferson Street. There's no need for bodega coffee shop in an area that already has several coffee shops, pastry shops, brew pubs, and grocery stores. In a 1 mile radius from this location, there are close to 20 coffee shops already. Having a business on the corner would just add more vehicle traffic in a neighborhood with narrow streets. The curve at West Jefferson Street makes it hard for vehicles parked on both sides. Coming around that curve is a blind spot for pedestrians, scooters, and cyclists. The bodega shop, in my opinion, would be better if it was on the corner of Bannock and 21st. Both those streets are wider. That you can see the strange curve there. And Jefferson is not a main thoroughfare. It's not like 27th Street, State Street, Fairview, or Main Street. We have lived in the location for 49 years and have enjoyed living in the area. We are not against something being built in this location, but we just do not feel that the present design fits the existing style of the neighborhood, and the addition of the commercial space could add too much additional traffic and be hazardous. This area is not appropriate for a business. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Next up, we've got Gail, and I'm sorry, what? Mackey. Gail Mackey, welcome.
I'm just going to reiterate what you've been listening to, but the biggest concerns are, well, they're very industrial, modern looking. That's a neighborhood of quaint little cottage style houses, and they're going to put a big monstrosity in the middle of it. That's a huge piece. I know before they've said, oh, well, parking's not an issue. The city doesn't consider parking to be an issue, but it is an issue. Already, if you're on Jefferson Street, and I go down there all the time, there's always cars parked on both sides of the street, especially on that corner, 19th and Jefferson. You have to wait for a car to pass through so you can get through. So the parking's already an issue, especially on the corner where they want to put the coffee shop, bodega, whatever. It's just parking's already an issue. If they're gonna put a coffee shop or a bodega or something, to be much better positioned on the back part of that lot on Bannock Street. Jefferson is very narrow. 19th, 21st, and Bannock are much wider and could accommodate something like that. The other thing is they keep the height is the biggest thing for me. They keep saying, oh, 2 or 3 stories. No, they're 3 or 4 stories. When you put that rooftop deck I know because I own a unit on the Stewart and 27th Street. If you stand on the sidewalk and look up at the 3 stories and then the rooftop deck, it is way the heck up there. My concern would be there are big shade trees in the front of everybody's yard on Jefferson. If you put something very tall up there, it's going to be, it's probably gonna just be dark on that street most of the time because there's shade trees, and then you're gonna have 3 and 4 story building across the street. When we met before, well, we've had a couple of community meetings about this, but when we came to the last meeting here, they talked about, and I think there was controversy about it, but the reason for wanting the MX1 designation is that he could put the units farther out to the street, which is going to make them farther, make them closer to the people, especially on Jefferson Street, causing a lot of shade, a lot more shade, darkness on that street. And again, it's a very narrow street already. So that's,
Time.
those are really, I think, the 4 big issues
Thank you, Gail.
there.
And then John Rutten Turner. Hi there.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I appreciate your time. John Rutten Turner, 1916 West Jefferson Street. So I live right across from the development site. First, I really do feel like this is a spot zoning. There's no MX zones adjacent to any of that property. We are a residential area. Commercial, we talked about it, it's been reiterated. I think it'll increase traffic, especially on that corner. It's not a safe corner. We've walked it. People can't see you sometimes when you're walking across the street. But I think the most important thing is keeping it R2, R3, just so that we can increase our density building in Boise. 22 units versus, I think we get more. And like Justin said, I think a great example of that is the Martha. There's a good diverse amount of living space there. You have studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and I think that fits much more of the need we have versus single family residential, where a lot of the families that are going to move in there are not going to be able to afford that type of housing where we're at. And so that's my big thing is I don't mind keeping it R2, R3, putting something with a little more in there so that it helps with the affordability problem that we have. I think also that the commercial space, again, we have so much around us already. We don't need that commercial space in that area. And so I think changing it to an MRX is kind of a pointless rezoning for our space. And so, and finally, I think the biggest thing is that that space, we have a certain look to the neighborhood, and I just would like that look to kind of stay the same. For me, if it's higher, but we get more people in that space, then I'm okay with that. So I do want the space to be developed. Having an empty lot across from me is not the best look. And so putting something there would be great. I support development, but just so that it follows hopefully the, Boise's core mission of increasing housing for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah Colson. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Colson, 2102 West Madison Ave. This is our second meeting, and we had a lot of people at the first meeting, which I guess wasn't as important. I don't know. That seemed a little strange. We had a lot of really heartfelt, intelligent comments that seemed to fall on very compassionate, but very deaf ears. It sort of felt like, not my neighborhood. Go ahead with it. And I think exactly what we're all asking for. No one is asking for this lot not to be developed. We're asking for the actual rules and zones that have just so recently been done just to be upheld and applied. We're asking for the rules to apply to everyone, including this developer. What we're asking for is no exceptions, no hardship clauses, no backroom deals, that we're just asking that the city uphold its own laws that it so recently put into place. This is definitely a microcosm of a larger problem where I feel like so many people feel the rules don't apply to them and they should get special exceptions when the actual zoning that's in place right now is completely legitimate and would work very well. I think the argument against the MX zoning is no one's really worried about an extra store. I feel like this developer is using the MX zoning just to get away from the setbacks. They don't care if there's one there or not. There's no need for it. There's obviously no want for it. They're using the change in zoning to get rid of setbacks on their own projects. So I feel like it's a pretty devious way to go around the current zoning laws that should just be in place when they're just using we'll throw a store, we'll throw a retail office. The owner can have his own office in there just to get around setbacks is pretty devious, I think. All the concerns. Jefferson's basically a one-way street already. You literally cannot drive with 2 cars at the same time on Jefferson. So to put 21 units there is a pretty big ask for what will be lots of on-street parking. I feel a lot of our concerns have been met with, well, Boise needs more housing, which I think is a gross, oversimplified way to look at things. Yes, we might need more housing. There is overcrowding in Boise, but without looking at infrastructure, roadways, amenities, neighborhoods, without being aware of all the other complex problems that go with that, a blanket statement saying we need more housing is not always solving the problem. With the height, I think a lot of the worry was privacy. A 4-story patio looking onto these houses, into people's bedrooms and kitchens and backyards. So I think that was one of the issues with the tallness. Not that it's not allowed. They could build even higher. I think that was a lot of the concern, is just blocking out the sun and then having people's rooftop patios like look right into established bedroom kitchen windows is pretty invasive. Really just, I'm almost out of time. Spot zoning should not be allowed. We're just asking that the same rules apply to everyone. We're just asking for the fair and just system to be applied where the infrastructure is already, has been strained. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, quick
Thanks,
question.
Sarah. Sure.
So I'm hearing different testimony and kind of hearing some different things. And I think where I'm trying to make sense of things is that we're saying that there's folks that are saying that we wish that it was going to stay the same zoning, R2 and R3. However, if it was R2 and R3, there could be more density now, or with those zones, that what's being proposed, and it could be taller. So if we didn't rezone it and we kept it R2 and R3, a developer could come in with a pretty large multifamily unit, significantly more units, and quite a bit higher. And so I'm trying to understand why there's not concerns with that, which is more traffic, more people, more cars on the street and higher, versus a new development where it's actually shorter, less units and less traffic than what's currently zoned. So can you help me make sense of why that's preferred versus the MX that is potentially less dense and shorter?
I do understand that, and they're well within their legal rights in this R2, R3 zoning. I was just sharing some of the worries that people had the property, especially it being like a rooftop patio that is going to be partying and looking over versus just like a normal apartment where you'd probably have your shades drawn or whatever. I know there's kind of a mix of arguments there. I'm not super against the tallness of it necessarily. I worry a little bit more of the density, the lack of the awareness of the neighborhood, the feel of it, the amenities, the infrastructure like that. But I do think that has just been a worry. They're well within their rights to do that. I just think those were the complaints, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, that's it for folks that signed up in advance. But is anybody here that would like to testify? Come on up. Nobody else? All right, then I'll have you, if anybody wants to testify, come on up, please, to the first row here. That way I know. We got 2 of you after. Great, go ahead.
Okay. I'm Lauren Panisi. I live at 2411 West Pleasanton Ave. And I too am commenting about the spot zoning because I participated in the zoning code rewrite process, went to the community meetings, came to the city council meetings, zoning meetings, the whole deal. And that was the promise of the zoning code rewrite, was we're not going to do spot zoning. We're going to have consistency in our zoning code so that people can have confidence. And I would like to know that where I live, that somebody couldn't demo a house and then be allowed to put in or apply for a zoning change and that be allowed or a possibility. So I want to be able to have confidence that I believe it's R2. I live in an R2 neighborhood, but like you say, Councilman Halliburton, somebody could put a much taller structure there. And that's true, they could. But at least they're consistent with the zoning. And I know that that's a risk kind of thing. And the other thing is the precedent. So if this developer gets that change, is that going to be another developer is going to then try the same strategy? Oh, let me just try to put in an MX1 here with an R2, R3, or some other zone because for whatever reason. So those are just some of my concerns. I travel on Jefferson every day. That is my road to get from my house to downtown, and everything that everyone is saying about that traffic, it's basically a one-way, all true, all true. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Shay Johnson, 2101 West Jefferson. And I'm not going to pretend to know anything about zoning. I don't know what it's zoned right now. I only know right and wrong patterns. And so that's all that I kind of looked at. So this project, it's gorgeous. I would hate for this project to go in. And because of the lack of conformity to the neighborhood at all, the people that live in it now hate it, and the people that live around it now hate it, because I think it is a gorgeous project. I just don't think it belongs right smack here. The project it's most similar to would be the Whitewater Station, which is on 27th and 27th and Stewart. Yeah. That also is almost the same size, the same, they have garages. And I used to live across the street at the 27th station or 27th apartments. And you couldn't park anywhere. It was all the way down the street. Even though they all had their own parking garages, it was backed up. There was never a way to get in there. They also have a commercial area, which again, that would contribute to the fact that my daughter and I would have to walk probably 2 or 3 blocks to get to our house that we live in on a daily basis because the parking was a problem. 27th is a huge street. It's way bigger than Jefferson. So I imagine when that construction was going in, it was a lot easier on some of those residents. It's going to be detrimental to a lot of the folks that live around there. If you go to Good Time Bagels on 25th Street and Fairview, that whole neighborhood is backed up during the morning. I'm sure those residents hate it. Don't leave until the rush is gone. I'm sure they worry about losing their parking. I would love to see something like the Adams Street cottages, the 40th Street cottages that are in Garden City. I believe that could be a real help to the affordability crisis that happens. I'm 47. I am a native in Boise, and I just got to move downtown. It's always been something that me and my friends growing up, oh, can't wait to live downtown, can't wait to live downtown. I barely afford it now, but I would love for younger generations to be able to now see what I see with living downtown and how great it is. I don't think anyone that is affording to move into those places are going to utilize the bus travel and the walking paths and all that. It is right in the middle of amenities. And when I was raising my kid, if I could have been around so many amenities, I think it would have been great for her growing up. And I think it would have been great for me as an adult. So that's all.
Thanks, Shay. You say you don't know zoning, but you sure know our neighborhoods and really appreciate that. Come on up, sir.
Hello, my name is Jim Haverkamp. I live at 2111 West Bannock. And I'm just worried about the height issue. the difference between the R3 and the MX1. And is there anybody here that can help me out with that?
And what I would do, we don't have staff take questions from the public, but in closing,
Oh, it's different than the first meeting. Then.
the
Well, maybe Ben will.
excuse me, sir,
Ben go.
sir, I'll ask that the applicant answer that question when he does his follow-up
Oh, okay.
remarks.
Yeah, it's just like, I know something's gonna be developed there sooner or later. But I just don't want something like I came to that first meeting with the planning and zoning. And there's a young woman here talking about, this looks like an oil refinery. And I don't want to see that. I mean, I look out my front window every day. I don't want to see that. But I wanted to make sure the heights stay within the heights of the R3 or the MX1, whatever. I just don't want to see nothing big, huge go up there. Like, this ain't downtown. It's a small neighborhood. And we're pretty close. We're in my neighborhood. And it's not anybody here off my street, but they all know me. You know? And that's what I was worried about, just the height. It's like, just stay within the code.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Hi, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Beth Breton Turner and I live on Jefferson. And I just wanted to point out that in our neighborhood, we have pretty great resources with the Whittier Elementary School and the community center there. And so adding, even if it was denser housing, but it could be more affordable housing that actual families could move into, that's such a great resource for families in our community. And at this point, more and more families are having to move away from it because of the cost of housing. And so as long as the school district has put all this money into it and they have all these great resources, and as so many people have said, the bus routes are so helpful to families. And so if we could really lean into that, even if it meant that more people were moving in and it was more dense, I think our neighborhood would appreciate being able to keep it more of a family area. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. All right, come on up. Hey there.
Hello. My name's Calder Hanson. I live on 1810 West Jefferson Street, and I don't fully know if I know my full stance on this, but I do know I attended the youth roadmap, and a main point of emphasis was this like third spaces where teens and youth can go and hang out and kind of live. And maybe this little coffee shop bodega might be something like that. But like I worry the houses aren't gonna have big like backyards or any space to be outdoors. And I don't know, maybe I didn't pay enough attention to the big diagram, but I don't know, that's maybe something I'm worried about. That's it.
Thanks, Calder. All right, anybody else? Okay, I'm going to have council members ask questions of staff at this point before we hear the final remarks from the applicant.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Chelsea, I would love if you could, I think you had a slide for it, but if you could pull up that comparison again between like what could be built now under the existing zoning and what is being requested.
And talking about height in particular as well, given the gentleman's question.
Yeah, and I would love, I know that if you could maybe, Jesse, just talk to really quickly, like we don't necessarily have a code now that says here's how many units you can build on that parcel, but we instead use these things like setbacks and height to help us get that. So can you talk a little bit about maybe what could be built on the existing zoning and maybe how that compares to what is being proposed? Just again, thanks, Jess.
Madam Mayor, council members. So the R2, R3, and MX1 zones all would allow multifamily as well as a variety of single family housing and then things like duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. So all those would be allowed uses within these zones. So the height would range between a maximum of 45 and 50 feet based on the existing zoning. And the MX1 would be limited to 45 feet. And the condition of approval recommended by Planning and Zoning Commission would be to limit that to 35 feet to the parapet with those overruns to 45 feet. So some of the things that would be different, the R2 and R3 do have minimum lot sizes that are a little larger than some of the lots being proposed. And then they have the setbacks. So R2 and R3 would allow for a minimum of a 10-foot setback in the front to the structure, whereas the MX1 does have a 0-foot setback allowed. I believe that currently the townhomes proposed are between 7 and 10 feet, but that could be confirmed by Ben when he comes up to address some of these other questions. And any development on the site would have to have required landscaping, would have to provide parking, and a certain amount of open space for any multifamily.
Madam Mayor, Jesse, can you maybe just explain to us more too on the setbacks and why they are set to 0 in the MX1 and what the city's hoping to gain with that?
Madam Mayor, council members. So all of the MX zones do have a range of setbacks, some with a maximum setback in a lot of those instances of 20 feet and a minimum of 0. The desire for that is to develop in these areas that are more pedestrian friendly, more connected to the streetscape, and generally bring more of that urban presence. The next one is the MX neighborhood zone. And so, with the height limits and what we would expect to see in the MX1 would be obviously less intense than what we would expect to see in the MX5.
Madam Mayor, if I may follow Jesse on it.
Yes.
Unrelated, I know we brought up access to potentially green space in the area. I can't recall. I feel like there's a park fairly nearby where this development is. Do we have that identified on the map?
I think it's Fairview.
Madam Mayor, council members, so the nearest park is right here, just a couple blocks away.
Oh, just a couple blocks. Yes, that's what I seem to recall. Okay, great. So there is access within walkability of a couple blocks to a pretty nice park for tenants. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yep.
So we heard a few folks with some issues of just how it looked and didn't really like the design of it. Can you talk a little bit about our ability to approve or deny something based off its design, how the city and the developer works with neighborhoods to address some of those design issues, or if that's something that's outside of our purview as far as the specific look of it?
Madam Mayor and council members. So this project would have to get staff level design review approval in order to be constructed. We do have design review guidelines and standards. However, architectural style is not really something that is specifically designated outside of historic districts.
Okay. And then there's been some questions, I think, about the rezone and potentially a spot zoning this spot and sort of some, I think, different ways of looking. Once we did the modern zoning code, that we should expect no zoning to change. I think a lot of times on council, we look at our land use map and we anticipate that there still may be some changes and that we didn't, when we did the modern zoning code, we didn't go through lot by lot and change every single one, but some specific zones automatically change to something else. So can you talk a little bit about the requirements now when we do a rezoning and why you think this fits within those requirements?
Sure, Madam Mayor and council members. So on the screen, you'll see the rezone findings for approval. And one of the criteria should be met that it's either to correct a technical error or for a change in circumstances. While there was a rezone citywide, most of that was a conversion. A lot of the zones stayed the same as with this neighborhood. The zoning was R2 and R3 with a design review overlay. We did remove the design review overlay because it was more based on uses in the current zoning code. And generally speaking, Boise is in a pretty severe housing shortage, so that's could be considered a change in circumstance or condition of needing additional housing within the city. The second finding would be to have something delivered in the best interest of the public or general welfare. Generally, when we're seeing that, we're looking for existing infrastructure in place, good connectivity, access to services and employment areas, as generally putting housing in a public interest in those areas. And then the third would be the size, scale, height, density, and mobility network. And the MX1 is very similar to the R2 and R3 with some of those minor things for reduced lot sizes and reduced setbacks. But generally what could be developed in those zones is fairly similar in scale, size, height, and density. Did that answer your question?
Yep. And then I think also you brought up earlier, you were talking about the land use map and how MX1 was the only other zone that qualified as far as the zoning code change based off of the land use map. Can you go over that again?
Madam Mayor and council members. So on the right, you see the land use map, and the high density would be on the southern portion of the property with the compact land use on the northern portion. And the MX1 is allowed in both of those land use areas.
Okay, great. And then it looks like just to the east, we actually have high density that runs all the way along to State Street until we hit our red zone there, or a pink zone. I'm trying to understand why. Never mind, I got it here. So yeah, just kind of looking at the land use map and where we are potentially looking at high density, but even if it's not high density and it's compact, the MX1 is still allowed in that compact zoning land use.
Madam Mayor, council members, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That looks like that's it for questions. The applicant, Ben, come on up for your final remarks. And after this, the public hearing is closed.
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, thanks again. I'm going to do my best to try to address all the comments that I heard from the neighbor and the neighborhood association. I do want to confirm real quick that the right-of-ways that surround this are all larger than what a typical residential street would have. Jefferson is the narrowest at a 60-foot right-of-way. Typically, a residential street is a 50-foot right-of-way. 21st Street is an 80-foot right-of-way. Bannock Street is an 80-foot right-of-way, and 19th Street is a 70-foot right-of-way. So just because of that, these homes are going to be set further away from the neighbors. You heard the neighbors talk about there's existing street trees on their sides of the street. We are maintaining all of the mature trees other than I think there's two that are either half dead or all the way dead that'll come down, but then we're supplementing with additional class 2 and 3 street trees because the planter strip is wide enough for those larger trees. Yeah, the expected development on this site could be, you know, with the current zone, in order to increase density would have to be multifamily. With R2 and R3, you could not get enough lots on the site to achieve the density that we have currently proposed. But you could get probably a parking reduction because of proximity to transit and downtown. And with an existing half hole in the ground on one half of it, you could probably go subsurface with some parking. So if you did a structured parking and you got a parking reduction, there's probably a real potential that this could have 100+ multifamily units on it. So my client does not build multifamily. That is not why he bought this property. He bought this to build single family homes. That's what he does, is build single family homes. The commercial, I don't know if it was a mistake, but I started this project in talking with my client about trying to find a small market operator, whether that's a bodega or a small wine shop or an ice cream shop, something like that, that if I was a neighbor, it would be nice to not have to cross State Street to get to a grocery store to buy a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk or something. That being said, the use will be vetted through, you know, if this is a commercial space, we can't exceed the use or the intensity of use that we have accommodated parking for. Right now, we have a 900 to 1,000 square foot retail space that requires half of a parking space per 1,000 square feet. We have 4 parking spaces on the site that are not required for the single family residential. So we're 8 times the required parking if this was a low intensity commercial use. That includes a small retail store. It includes a small office space, an artist studio, something like that. So I think that I understand the concern about the neighbors seeing bodega, coffee shop. It said coffee bar or something to that effect, I think is what the architect had put on his floor plans. That is not set in stone right now. We're still trying to find an operator. So ultimately, this is a commercial shell to try to bring, it could be another neighbor that lives in the neighborhood that wants to lease a space for an office because they don't want to drive to Meridian or something like that. So there's a lot of opportunity here for a commercially or a residential neighborhood scaled commercial space. I just wanted to get that out there. It is not why we selected the MX1 zone, selected the MX1 zone because it fits within the comp plan. We talked with city staff about this at length about what was most appropriate to achieve the level of density that my client wants to achieve here while providing some housing. This is not an affordable housing project. The land cost alone pretty much eliminated that from possibility. That being said, any house that gets built will help offset some of the housing concerns we have here in the city. A lot of times when people leave older housing stock to go to a new housing stock, it opens up that house for maybe an existing family in town, and it's inherently a little more affordable than existing versus a new build. The Travis building, I believe it's 5 stories. I think that's 50 plus feet tall. This is well below that. We have a condition of approval placed by P&Z. We agree to it and will adhere to it. 35 foot to a parapet, 45 foot for overrun. That's maximum. So there could be these 2 stories that they're 35 maximum to the top of all their overruns because they're only a 2-story to a parapet. See the blind spot at 19th and Jefferson, we're trying to address that with conversations with ACHD, some additional traffic calming, stop signs. I will
Ben,
mention.
you're at time, so I'm gonna,
Okay.
I let you finish that sentence you were in the middle of. I have a feeling folks will have some questions for you.
Sure. So the parking.
No, I let you finish
have to.
the sentence that you were in the middle of when you were at time.
Gotcha.
You already
Thank you,
did
Madam
it.
Mayor.
You already did your sentence.
Already
Sorry.
finished. Got it.
Madam Mayor, there was a couple folks, I think there's some sensitivity to the commercial. I think there's also some sensitivity of commercial at the corner. Is there a reason why it's located on that corner shape of lot? Any specific reason why it was there and not at a different corner of the lot?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, it really is the shape of that parcel, trying to get something that's rectangular shaped to build a building on, left this kind of weird space that didn't have access to the parking without walking, and we didn't want to have a disconnected home from any parking at all. So
great, thank you.
That's why that's selected.
Further questions?
Madam Mayor, we had a young man testified, and I asked about this amenity space, basically. So outdoor space, MX1 does have an amenity requirement for a space. Can you just highlight what that space is?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Morales, we do have some on-ground green space. It'll be landscaped. We do anticipate putting at least one of the pet relief stations there for resident use. With Fairview Park being 2 blocks away, there's a very large play structure that's there. They have tennis courts, maybe pickleball. Don't know how that's shaken out
Anymore.
there. Yeah. So I know that's getting rebuilt there too. So feel real good about recreation opportunities. Each unit has a rooftop. Some of these are 700, 800 square foot rooftop decks. So there's plenty of outdoor space. Understanding that we all need green space. We like to be in in green space. So we did connect between all these green spaces on the property with some walking paths, trying to enhance that use. I think I heard a comment about like the third place also that, again, we have an outdoor patio space associated with that commercial zone. Kind of, that's sort of what was being thought about, contemplated with the project. Again, kind of in flux as to who the end user is.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just to follow up as
Yeah.
well on the commercial space. So just I want to clarify, looking at that corner, you felt like there wasn't a way to fit a residential unit there with parking. Did you consider an unparked unit or a live work unit or some other type of unit?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Morales, we did look at live work. That's my client's unit is probably the one attached to that building or that space. So that's why we talked about maybe that's his live workspace. We didn't want to handcuff it with making that live work because sometimes finding the right buyer for that, if he didn't live there, could be challenging. Really wanted it to be a standalone space.
Madam Mayor. But thank you very much for the presentation. Can you, I think I heard you correctly, but the density that we have there today with zoning it to MX1 would be more dense than it would be at R3.
Madam Mayor,
Configuration.
Councilmember Corliss, basically there's no density in R3. If you can park something, then you can build that number of units for what you can provide parking for. So, I mean, right now, to build a single family development in an R3 zone on this specific property, you could not get to 21 units because of the lot size requirement.
Okay, great then. And I know we heard concerns about the rooftop units potentially being areas, and they're nice to have some outdoor space for those who are living there, potentially having access to look into other neighbors. And I believe you, with the drawing that you had, most of that indoor space seemed to be kind of centralized on those units.
Yeah,
Was there some thought put into that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Corliss, I apologize for stepping on your words there. Yeah, the thought is, for one, we have to provide some setback from the parapet just for safety purposes. So you're not right up at the edge of the parapet looking straight down. And for privacy of these residents as well, it is located more centrally to the building envelope or in the back. So primarily they're looking internal to the development. Will there be views across the street? I'm sure there will. I don't sit in my house looking at my neighbor's windows, but you know, I would certainly hope that people don't do that. But you know, we did think about that. So we're trying to protect as much as we can. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, just one last question. On this, when we're thinking about that third space, I guess on the bottom floor, we had our youth roadmap outlined today for us in an earlier work session. And as we heard today, it'd be nice as you guys are thinking about this and if possible to have a space that could also be inclusive with teens as well. I guess it's just more of an ask for a consideration when thinking about that space.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Corliss, just to touch on that real quickly, I think part of what we're trying to do here too is provide a public space that maybe highlights some history of Boise in this specific area that becomes a publicly accessible place where it could be, maybe it's not as developed as a teen specific third place, but you know, usable by the public. And we do agree we'd put an easement over that to protect that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and close this public hearing and ask for a motion discussion.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I might end up doing this in two separate motions, one for the zoning and one for the subdivision. So I move that we approve CR 25-17. Rezone of approximately 1.96 acres, including adjacent rights of way from R2 and R3 to MX1.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor. So it's always, I think, challenging. We hear lots of different public testimony, and I understand sometimes when people may feel like it's fallen on deaf ears. But as I'm sitting here, I'm hearing different things from different people. I'm hearing some folks who would like more density, so it's a little bit cheaper. I'm hearing from some folks who'd say we would actually be okay with a taller height. And then I'm hearing other folks say it's too tall right now. But then there's also a current zoning code that could say that could even be taller. So there's a lot of competing things here of what people are looking for. And then I'm also hearing concerns of this looks like spot zoning and why wasn't taken care of in the modern zoning code. Well, when we passed the modern zoning code, one, we didn't expect it to always, stay the same. It's a living document that things are going to change as the city changes as well. And we expect there to be some changes within the modern zoning code. We didn't go through and change every single lot and examine every single lot, but we did things as a whole, and there were some types of zones that rolled into other ones. So we do anticipate, changes in zoning. I can't help but like sit here and think that I'm surprised that this actually was asked to go to MX1, because what I probably would have anticipated is somebody would have asked the R2 to be rezoned to R3. Because this is typically the kind of ask that we would see when we have a pretty big bare vacant lot. And what that would mean would be a larger multifamily development. And I think that, based off of the land use and based off of housing and different types of areas where this is close to transit lines, close to downtown, close to jobs, potentially that would have made a lot of sense to have a really large multifamily unit, really close to the downtown area. At the same time, that would have been higher. It would have been 4 floors for sure. And it probably would have had either some sort of internal parking, to get it to those 4 floors. And so some of the concerns of height would be worse than what they are now. The vehicle trips per day in that R3 zone, had somebody asked to rezone it, and it probably would have fit those qualifications, would have been significantly more based off those units. So those concerns with traffic, I don't know that are addressed either. So when something comes in front of us like this, I think that our job is to really, one, make sure that we're looking at code. Does this meet the requirements of city code? In this case, it does. It meets the parking requirements. It meets the land use designations. It meets what we expect to see. Even in our modern zoning code, we really had a desire to see more smaller commercial retail spaces in neighborhoods throughout the city, because that's what people were telling us that they wanted to see. And so this has that as well. I do think that this is what I would consider a modern design. It's a little bit different for Boise, but if you were in a bigger city, you would see this all over the place. These different types of rooftop patios that are sort of examining opportunities for open space in a denser sort of urban area. And, while the design may not fit everybody's aesthetic, I think it is a design that sort of meets the needs of having spaces for people to be outdoors in an urban area that has a lack of, outdoor space other than a park that's down the road. And so again, I understand that people may feel like this potentially has fallen on deaf ears. I think that there's nuances that we hear from people who are wanting different things, and council who's trying to put together a decision that in the end really focuses on, does this meet city code, and does this meet the comprehensive plan? Does it meet our future land use map and really the goals and the values of the city? And while I would have been supportive of a multifamily housing here, because I think that this would have been a good spot for it, I also think that this provides a variety of housing types that we don't necessarily see a lot of in Boise. And that variety of housing types, I think, makes for vibrant, diverse neighborhoods. And so, I made that motion, and certainly, we'll be voting in favor of the motion I made.
Madam Mayor, I just joked to Councilmember Morales on that last point that you officially took all of my notes. So for a lot of the same reasons, there were a couple other, I agree with the kind of the contradiction from the neighbors on another point was about the parking. If it was much denser, it would contribute to what sounds like already a tight parking situation there. We hear from a lot of neighbors who are getting that 100 or more unit apartment complex and trying to figure out how that will impact their roads. And then the one that I had underlined was this is a different product than we have. And that was one of the major goals of the zoning code, was to provide that variety of housing options. I wish that we could require some sort of affordability, and but the best we can do is try to incentivize people for the private developers for those decisions. We're prohibited from requiring a lot of things like affordability, or that it be homes just for families, or, there's a lot of limitations around those kinds of expectations. So yeah, for those reasons, I'm also supporting the motion. I believe that what they're asking for here does fit within code, and the triangle property is harder to work with than, the worst, I think, is when we see variances being requested for just a square property. The triangle is a little bit trickier. Even looking at it through the project report, it was a little harder for me to figure out, like, what is the where is the rear of this, and which side is the front, that kind of thing. So I think the variance in this case makes sense because of the, oh, this is just the rezone. I'll pause on that. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, that's it. Motion. So go ahead and say what you want to say. I'll take all comments. Yeah.
Anyway, just to finish that sentence, the variance makes sense to me in this case, trying to fit what we can on this unusual shaped parcel.
Madam Mayor. Thank you. I want to thank everyone that came out and testified, recognize some names from testimony that was provided, planning and zoning before, letters that have been sent in. So I know some of you have been involved for a while and appreciate you and want you to know that we did see your comments. And I think as my council member colleagues have mentioned, there is varying opinions, and we heard about it in multiple different kind of reasons for or against this project. We need more homes that are in convenient and connected neighborhoods. This is a very convenient and connected neighborhood. And so as was discussed tonight, and some people testified, looking at a denser development here would be of interest. Just because it's kind of an embarrassment. This property offers an embarrassment of riches in a lot of facets. One that was heavily talked about tonight is commercial use. Like, that is incredible that this neighborhood has so much commercial use nearby as well. I'm super jealous. My neighborhood has nothing like this. We talk about transit service needing to rely to be car dependent, being within a 10-minute walk of two best in class transit lines. And so in a way, yeah, I hear where you're coming from on all these things. And so that makes this neighborhood a convenient and connected neighborhood. And that's something to be really proud of. And I really appreciate it. I think she took off Shay's testimony talking about trying to live in a neighborhood like this. I think I heard like this isn't downtown, but Shay talked about trying to get downtown and trying to be able to access these kinds of riches in an amazing neighborhood. And so when I think about what this could be, if it was an R3 rezone, it could be homes for more people to be able to benefit from those things. I think this development probably suits maybe half the folks that testified's goal of less people to have to share this neighborhood with. And that might not be the right way of saying it, but in terms of the impacts that will be felt through traffic or things like that nature. And it's a different product type. I appreciate the comments about we want more places where families can afford. And I think we feel that in a lot of neighborhoods, that we want more places for our kids' friends to live and families to be able to grow up. And we see school enrollment, younger ages and declining, things of that nature. And so I appreciate those comments. I think one thing to think about with any kind of new construction in this environment is that we are battling land costs, lack of labor, and material costs, all these things that any kind of new construction is probably going to make affordability difficult without heavy subsidies, usually from the government, usually taxpayer subsidies. These developments don't stay new forever. Even luxury apartments, when they come before us, they might be class A today, but in 35 years, they're going to be at least class B. Right. And so these are homes for families of the future potentially. And I like to think that obviously, ultimately, this property owner is choosing to develop this way. They are within the rules. They're going through the process here, living by the rules to be able to build the type of project that they want to, and is afforded in current code. So I will be supporting the motion, but I want to thank everyone for the comments. And I hope that the character of the neighborhood really is the people, and that you'll have an opportunity to make a lot of new friends. Thanks.
Madam Mayor, I will also be supporting this motion tonight. I think this rezone does fit within our code, and we have heard, I like the mix that they have here for the density. I think if we were to go to a multifamily home and go to a taller unit, I think you'd have, I just don't think that the style would not fit within the neighborhood. And I think you'd have more traffic, you'd have more what do I want to say? It's just that height and the traffic would, I think, cause additional problems. Not all of our, unfortunately, developments will have affordability within them. This certainly is one of them that won't have that affordability component. I appreciate everybody coming out and testifying. We did hear what you have to say. And I think that need for the housing that we have today, I think this will contribute to providing more housing, not affordable, but more housing online that will free up other housing units for people coming in. The one thing I did hear, and we hadn't talked much about because it's not part of our zoning code, is the style of the home. It's a very, very modern feel. I think that's something maybe we just look to the developer just to say, might just look at the consideration of the neighboring homes to find something that's, helps fit in there a little bit as well. I appreciate the development. It has a stepped in, it's a lower height. And the thought of having that outdoor upstairs space, I think, is a nice touch for those who'll be living there. So I'll support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just real quick, and then I'll be quiet. Want to make sure that folks know that the condition that was set in planning and zoning of 35 feet top, and then with the parapet exists on this. And that's important for people to know because there was some concerns of if this didn't go as planned and it came back up there, that condition still exists on the rezone. And this also is coming with the subdivision. So if they didn't develop this lot, somebody would have to come back in front of us with a different subdivision plan, and there would be a different hearing associated with that. So I want to make sure that folks know that that's included in the motion.
Thank you. Okay, clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thanks. And final motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve SCB 25-50, Rodney Evans and Partners, 1907 West Jefferson preliminary plat for a mixed-use subdivision comprising of 21 residential, 1 commercial building, and 2 common lots on 1.06 acres.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll have the comments from the last deliberation stand. Clerk?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.